Hi, this is Bruce Rawles. Today I'm talking with Susan Dugan. And again, since we've been doing a number of these for a number of years, we're going to be talking about A Course in Miracles. Surprise, surprise. And today, Susan picked out a lesson that I think is an excellent one. It's 96, lesson 96 from the Workbook of A Course in Miracles. And it is Salvation Comes from My One Self. And we're going to try to read as much of this as we can, just because it's chock full of really important ideas. So thank you for picking this, Susan. And do you have any opening comments or?
No, just really that, just one maybe announcement, I guess,
Okay, okay.
and that would be that I completed or posted a interview with Jeff Siebert from the Foundation for A Course in Miracles
Mhm.
last, just a few days ago, really. And excuse me, so that's on my website, www.forasinforgiveness.com. And Jeff is a long-term teacher. I have quite a few interviews with him and with Rosemary Lasasso on there, as well as Ken Wapnick. And we had conducted the interview before the coronavirus really got bad and the stay-at-home orders were put in place. But it is one of the subjects that we were going into because it was already beginning to, you could kind of see that this was coming. And so we do talk about it, and I think it's very relevant for people. And then the other things that are on that we talked about were bodily issues, because I had had some health problems earlier in the year and some other and the loss of my dog and stuff like that. And really it was just sort of a bombardment of those bodily issues, and then and then the coronavirus was sort of what was coming next. And I think it might be it was really helpful for me talking to Jeff about it, and I think it might be helpful for other people. So that if you haven't checked that out, I'd recommend doing it.
Yes, yes, indeed.
So yeah.
Also, would it be appropriate to mention your classes online now, to your Tuesday night class?
Well, I am doing my class here in Denver online. It's a really small class, and if someone was interested in attending it, they can certainly email me, and if they, I wouldn't recommend it for beginners to the course. It's
Hmm.
not really. It would be hard to, especially in a Skype format. I don't think that would be probably the best the
Sure,
best way to introduce you to the class. I'd like to be able to have in-person contact with people if they're really new to the course. But
sure.
if they're long-term students, if they're Kinwapnik students, certainly give me yeah, you feel free to contact me,
Okay,
and I'll let
great,
you know the more details about that.
great,
So yeah.
good.
And
Okay,
Bruce attends, and we laugh a lot. We all laugh.
I've enjoyed.
It's a very small class. It's really, yeah. So
Yeah, since a lot of us are spending a lot more time not doing things that we were doing previously, it's given me some opportunity to attend some,
right.
and very much enjoying your classes. Yeah,
Well, thank you.
yeah.
We enjoy having you. So let's get started on this. Huh? Salvation comes from my one self. Um, I really was drawn to this lesson again, just really in trying to apply the course, and especially particularly given the uh, really challenging situation that we seem to all be in right now with COVID-19. And I think that what was coming up for me, and maybe people can relate to this, was all of the frantic ways I was trying to cope with this, and the anxiety that it seemed to be creating for me, and the worry about, because I do have some health problems, I feel like I'm a little more at risk, and but it's that vulnerability. I mean, of course, that's a choice to identify with that. Um, we're all vulnerable, really, and we really don't know our vulnerability. That there's so much that's unknown about this, and there's so much that we don't even know who might be carrying it, who might, the whole thing is just filled with uncertainty. We don't know how long we're gonna be potentially exposed to this. We don't know how long we're gonna have to stay at home. We're out of a lot of the things that they're recommending that you use to try to protect yourself. You can't even find. And so, that's if you're identified as a personal self, as a body, that can really get you pretty frantic, you know? I mean, if that's all that you're seeing, and I was really noticing just that kind of anxiety, and how it felt really, you know, I know I've been doing the course for a long time. I practice this, I teach it, and I was, you know, very aware that I have another part of my mind, and that this is not all that I am, and that, you know, there is peace somewhere in my mind, but it just seemed very inaccessible in some ways. And this was one of the lessons that I've come to, you know, that I found recently, and it really spoke to me about where, you know, that our mind is split. We still believe we're not at the top of the ladder home yet. We're not, you know, we're still identified with the personal self, and we shouldn't feel badly about that. But you know, we have to, we also know that there's an answer. We're kind of between two two worlds, and you know, the only one of those teachers in our mind is ever going to bring us peace. There's really no way to minimize the threat level here. The threat level is, if we minimize one threat level, another will come.
Mhm.
As we all know, we can't really control any of this, and of course we made it up. You know, that's why we came here. We made it up as you know, the seeming solution for the belief in separation, that we could somehow, um, you know, escape into a made up or an imaginary world and have our experiment in individuality, and somehow keep the guilt over believing that we really did this to God at bay by you know, feeling constantly under attack by something else outside of us, which
Mhm.
alleviates the guilt at least. So we're actually willing to suffer enormously.
Well, that kind of really hits at the heart of what the course is about. Is
Yeah,
basically having us, you know, look at our resistance to the idea of looking at the unconscious, unfounded guilt that we don't know is unconscious and we don't know is unfounded until we ask for guidance from what the course calls the Holy Spirit. And once we do that, then we're face to face with that uncertainty that's really been there all along. But then we have a situation like the current pandemic that just brings it into such stark, sharp focus, and then we realize, wow, I could have been doing this all along and looking at this. And so as you were sharing the last few minutes, what flashed through my mind is I think there's like a Chinese or maybe Japanese ideogram with the symbols that mean simultaneously crisis and opportunity. I remember reading
so
about that
like an
years.
I Ching kind of, that sort of thing.
Well,
Yeah,
there's the
yeah.
symbol that basically has a dual meaning, and one meaning is crisis, and the other is opportunity. And I was
Hmm.
thinking, well, that really is the two thought systems. And in a nutshell, is that we have, from the ego's perspective, everything is a crisis, and always has been. And it gets, you know, there are times when things seem to be on an even keel, and it's, you know, we're sedated enough by ego's you know, propaganda that we don't really pay much attention to it. But then in the last month or so, globally, probably a lot of people are recognizing, wow, all the normal routines and the sense of uncertainty that's been, you know, tremendously interrupted. You know, brings to light, into sharp focus, the line from the course is, you know, if we trust in, I'm going to paraphrase as usual, if we trust in our own, the little s self, which is what we might want to read uh, the, as we go through the workbook lesson today. If we trust in our little s self, we have every reason to be uncertain, lonely, and in constant fear.
Right.
And that's really the only state that the ego has. I mean, it seems to be sometimes throttled down a bit, but if we're really looking at it, I think that's where the course also says, you know, a mild twinge of annoyance is just a veil over intense fury,
Yeah.
and that's really the way it's been from the beginning of
Right.
the dream of time and space and separate selves.
Right.
But so this really could be an opportunity, if we're willing to look at it, to just see how much we have suppressed and denied um, our investment in ego insanity, And when you just lay it on the table, put it on the altar of the mind, so to speak, and just say, wow, this really
Yeah.
truly is
Wow.
not working. And the phrase, a
That's
phrase
right.
that I don't know if you came up with it, but I think of you because I heard it first, and it
Right.
frequently was how's that working out for you? I just kind of imagine, our inner kindness
Jesus
teacher,
asking that. Yeah.
Jesus, saying, just nonchalantly, it's like kind of like, just do a little, hey, how about a quick mental inventory? How's that ego thought system working out for you? And if we can, even begrudgingly say, well, maybe it's not perfect,
Hmm.
and then then slowly ease into it doesn't work at all, which is probably the ultimate point at which, the course suggests that's where God takes the final step. But little by little, I think we erode our investment in that little less self that
Yeah.
just we know doesn't work. That the separate self, the silly, seemingly separate self, I like to call it these days.
Right. Right. The sinful, right? Seemingly so
Yeah,
separate.
yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. And so it really is that recognition that I'm relying on my weakness, I'm only relying on my personal self. And when I do that, part of me knows that I'm really screwed.
Betting on the
Mm,
wrong dead
yeah, like
horse.
I'm betting on the wrong horse here. There's no way out of this, right? So
Exactly.
I think that's really where the anxiety comes from, is the futility of what we're doing.
Yeah.
When you can't, and this lesson really speaks to that. So maybe we should just
Let's dive in, shall we?
start.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, um, do you want to start or?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
Okay, 96. Salvation comes from my one self. I think if sorry with you, I think I'll just uh, put whenever since there's upper and lowercase self throughout this lesson, I'll just emphasize self with a little bit of extra oomph, and then
Okay.
I'll put lowercase self or little self where there's a lowercase s self.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yep.
Yeah, that way we don't have to,
The uppercase self is really our true,
uh,
is our self apart, as one with God.
exactly. Yeah,
Himself that is still that undifferentiated oneness with God. So,
exactly. So he says, although you are one self, you experience yourself as two, as both good and evil, loving and hating, mind and body. This sense of being split into opposites induces feelings of acute and constant conflict and leads to frantic attempts to reconcile the contradictory aspects of this lowercase s self perception. You have sought many such solutions and none of them has worked. The opposites you see in you will never be compatible, but one exists. And
right,
there's that forgotten song, if you will, that persistent, gentle, eternally patient capitalist self that speaks to us through the rubble of what we made up,
right,
and gently, patiently waits for us to
right. Yeah,
to choose again.
takes out the tantrum basically.
Yeah, yeah.
But there has to be. It's really the pain of that. It's the disillusionment, if you will, beginning to see that that none of your ways are working. And in a situation like we have right now, I think we do have an opportunity for accelerated growth, accelerated undoing, really,
Mm-hmm,
because
mm-hmm.
we don't have the mechanisms to deny or to deceive ourselves that we had, even a few weeks ago, right? To say that maybe somehow I can make this work.
Right.
And so, in a way, as you were saying earlier, it's an opportunity. To use this as a classroom, to use this as to change the purpose of our lives, and to go, and those of us who have been trying to make that, make forgiveness, true forgiveness, the purpose of our lives, we get a chance to go a lot deeper with this. We get a
Absolutely.
chance to say, wait a minute, this isn't just a casual kind of thing, that I wait, till I'm ready. This is, I can't, the pain of what I'm doing right now, and we should becoming, more and more sensitive to the way we feel, because that's what the practice of the course does. It exposes,
Mm-hmm.
the really the suffering that we're causing ourselves by contrast, by that contrast with how we feel when we actually are able to open to the peace in our mind and have um, that shift to the awareness, even to the awareness, that momentary holy instant when we're truly outside of time and space with Jesus, and just know that that we're innocent, and so is everyone else, including the person I was just in conflict with. But even when we, as part of that process, have the sort of intermediary step where we experience that we have, that we are the same, that we're suffering and our egos are acting out for the same reason. I mean, that's a huge step um,
Hmm.
toward the away from the ego, and it's inevitable that we will make that shift back to the right mind. So we have that contrast now,
Yeah.
between that and how it feels when we are refusing to even turn in that direction.
Right.
So
Yeah. And in a practical way, maybe that take manifests as in in our mind, we can say, oh, the person next to me in the grocery store, is just as freaked out about this, and anything I can do that might be helpful and courteous and compassionate
right,
is really compassion to myself. And then that's basically the reframe that says, I'm not just this separate self. I'm really I could consider the idea that this capital S self, this real self, includes maybe not everyone at first, but more than just myself. And that willingness to suspend the little tiny frame that we've boxed ourselves in as a silly, seemingly separate self, as I like to call it, is a step in that direction. And that's, I think, really a way that we could, keep the holy instance going by just moment to moment seeing when we feel the need to condemn or
right,
feel victimized or competitive or any kind of adversarial conflictual frame of mind. That's a clue. And like you say, we have to pay attention to our feelings and how do I feel in any moment? Am I at peace? And if not, okay,
right.
back to square one.
Right, and
Got to
if
choose a
I'm
different
blaming
teacher.
someone, if I'm in conflict with someone in my family over this, which it puts a lot of pressure on relationships to be
Sure.
sort of, quarantined together
Right.
and restricted in the things that we can do.
Mhm.
I don't have kids in the house anymore, but I can't only imagine how difficult that must be, and for parents who are trying to work at home to also be trying to homeschool their kids is pretty is that must be incredibly difficult.
Mhm.
And people are all anxious and upset. So people are acting out more than they normally would, and I mean, it's just human nature that that happens. And then there's all the news coming at you, and, all the wanting to blame someone for this. So, yeah, I mean, we've got a lot on our forgiveness plate, right? So,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, I mean, in truth, where it's really not about any of those things, but in practice, that's where we begin, and it's really, seeing how I'm trying to attribute my reactions to those causes is really the practice, and saying, I must be wrong about this. This is what if I'm wrong, even is enough. As we were talking about it in class last night, that to just recognize that there is a part of my mind that remains at peace, and I can still connect with it, and eventually we do. Eventually our resistance, the pain becomes enough that there's a tipping point, and we just say, oh, and then there is a shift at some point, and sometimes it's not a direct, doesn't seem like it, a shift when we're willing to do this. So yeah, you want me to read the next paragraph?
Sure, why not?
The fact that truth and illusion cannot be reconciled no matter how you try, what means you use, and where you see the problem must be accepted if you would be saved. So, that's kind of asking, it sounds like it's asking a lot, doesn't it? That no matter how you try, nothing's going to work, right? It can't be reconciled. No matter what means you use, no matter how many ways you try to figure it out. Um, Until you have accepted this, you will attempt an endless list of goals you cannot reach, a senseless series of expenditures of time and effort hopefulness and doubt, each one as futile as the one before, and failing as the next one surely will. I added money to that list too. Expenditures
Certain,
of
oh, certainly.
time and effort and money.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, this reminds me of Ken's wonderful workshop on futility to happiness, where he talks about the Sisyphus myth.
Hmm.
And right now, the big stone we're pushing up, it could be, have, instead of the face of Zeus, it could be COVID-19
Right,
emblazoned on the rock
right.
that keeps, crashing back down on us every time we get it
Mhm.
close to the top of the hill. But really just back it up a couple months. It could be something else. It could be the outcome of an election 3 years ago. It could be, you know, Middle East crisis a decade ago. It could be,
Yeah,
any number of things. That moment to moment, the ego always looks for some kind of a scapegoat, and as another of Ken's metaphors is, we have this grab bag of guilt that it's just so handy to pull out some other thing to blame. And
yep,
as long as we are in that mindset of thinking that we need to have a scapegoat, the goat scape will be populated with any number of opportunities for targets for our ego attacks.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Going to
But
read the
they
next.
won't make us happy.
No,
That's the
no. I
catch.
mean, it doesn't ever make us happy. We're seeking,
No, no, no.
we're seeking for solutions where the problem isn't, and
Exactly.
where they can't be found. And that's part of the strategy, that maybe the next solution will work.
Seek but do not find, says
Right.
ego. Huh?
Right.
Shall I read the next one?
Yep.
Yep. Problems that have no meaning cannot be resolved within the framework they are set. Sounds like Einstein's famous,
As it's a
yeah,
paraphrasing
yeah, can't solve the problem at the level that it wasn't made
level
at.
that it was made. Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing as usual. Two selves in conflict could not be resolved, and good and evil have no meeting place. The self you made can never be your self. Let me start that over. The little s self, the lowercase self you made can never be yourself, nor can yourself be split in two and still be what it is and must forever be. A mind and body cannot both exist. Make no attempt to reconcile the two, for one denies the other can be real. If you are physical, your mind is gone from your little s self concept, for it has no place in which it could be really part of you. If you are split, then the body must be meaningless to your reality.
Right. If you are spirit,
So
then
did I say, yeah, I thought spirit. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
yep.
Thank you for that correction. The word, because I just read the word
But
split. It's
it's
like, wait a
what
minute.
we
No,
think
that's
we
not
are.
right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's no there. We do try to reconcile the two. We try to say, we try to bring the course down to our level, and we try to say that, please help me here. I mean, I know I still do that. I still say to Jesus, well, I don't usually ask for these things, but in this case, I mean, and remember you helped Helen, and stuff like
And I
that.
want something more important than
Yeah, really.
shoes, right?
And what am I, chopped liver?
Really, really.
So, I think, I mean, and of course, he's not saying that we deny the body. I mean, wear the masks, take
Hmm.
whatever supplements make you help your immunity, do whatever is not. Yeah,
Have magic will travel, right?
right. Sanitize, do whatever. But again, it's that frantic quality that we get into.
Right,
Until
right.
we really know that we're only spirit, it would be foolish not to
Yeah,
do this. And even at that point, we probably, if we were still in bodies, I mean, I think that Ken would wear a mask,
yeah.
um,
Why not?
because it would be sort of separating not to, right? I mean, and you wouldn't want to. I mean, it's just the normal thing to do, and he was always telling us to do the normal thing. But at the level of the mind and the practice of the course, we have to be remembering that this is, we want to identify with the part of our mind that knows we're not these vulnerable bodies. And that's where the only real healing can occur. And we have to, and for that to occur, we have to also acknowledge that everybody is just like me in the same fear. It doesn't matter how they're acting out. We can't be in any way excluding others from this. So again, when those thoughts of being personally attacked by someone, being somehow unfairly treated by this, or singled out by this, or angry that you can't get the products you need because others got it first, or whatever might be coming up for you around this, or the people that you're dealing with in your family, because again, we're with our special relationships, a lot of us right now,
Mhm,
or the
mhm,
people that are having to work in essential services, and yeah, they have a job, but they're exposed. Like, there's nobody really that's in a great situation here.
mhm, mhm.
So it's really the economic drain is on so many people. There's terrible worries that people have. So I think that we everybody's suffering here, and so to really see that that the solution really can't be found here, that the healing and the comfort that we're looking for and the real answers have to come from a part of our mind that's not part of this.
Yep.
And God would not be part of this. Course does not endorse the view that God knows about this world.
Mhm,
That a
mhm.
loving God would have anything to do with punishment, or trials, or initiations, or whatever stories we tell ourselves about why a God would be putting people through this.
Exactly. Yeah, I had a conversation with Jackie Laura Jones yesterday about the sickness being of the mind, and
Mhm.
one of the quotes that she pulled out, which has always been one of my favorite challenging quotes, if those two aren't an oxymoron, and that is, if this were the real world, God would be cruel,
Yeah,
meaning that perfect oneness has no um, there's no room for duality and perfect oneness. And so the duality of I mean, waxing metaphysical a little bit for a moment, but that's what the course is based on, is the pure non-dual metaphysics of the idea that we're just one spirit. And that's the spirit that's talked about in the paragraph we just read, is if we are that spirit and everybody is that same essence, and we're all in the same boat because we're all the same essence, then there's nothing to get hung about, as as the Beatles would sing,
right,
and there's no need for suffering in truth, other than we just need to bring that suffering in the mind to the altar, and ask Holy Spirit to look at it with us, so that it can be mitigated by the understanding that this need not be. I don't need to to punish myself for a crime that really couldn't have happened in truth.
exactly.
And but that takes a lot of practice. So I think that's this is just we're living in an era where our daily forgiveness practice, on one level, may seem to be pushed into a much higher gear, but in a sense we've had this opportunity all along, 24/7,
Yes,
365, and now we're just probably those that are using it as an opportunity to be more mindful, just noticing that it's really there.
right,
Yeah,
right. We can't
yeah.
really go very long with it seems like it's the possibilities of denial have been greatly removed.
Yeah, remove or maybe shifted, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and the people that want to pull the wool over their eyes even further,
right.
certainly can,
No, we have two. Our minds are split. We can use
yeah, yeah,
yes, absolutely, and we can use it to project more.
right,
Totally. I
right,
mean, that we see that all over the place. So,
yeah,
and I mean, hopefully, we see it in ourselves
yeah,
too.
and yeah, need to be more compassionate to
Because again,
us.
it's always it's my mind in need of healing. I'm not in charge of anybody else's story or plan or spiritual path. I mean, it's only my own mind really in need of healing. And
Hmm.
from the course's metaphysics, that's very literal.
Yeah,
So because we're just really one mind. So
yes.
okay, so I'm going to read 4. Is
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
Spirit makes use of mind as means to find its self-expression, and the mind which serves the spirit is at peace and filled with joy. Its power comes from spirit, and it is fulfilling happily its function here. Your mind can also see itself divorced from spirit and perceive itself within a body it confuses with itself. Without its function, then, it has no place, and happiness is alien to its thoughts. And that's a great description of which teacher we've chosen, right? I
Hmm.
mean, if we're anything but happy and joyful, then we've chosen the ego. I mean, as Ken used to say, if you're not feeling kind toward everyone and everything and perfectly peaceful, then assume you've chosen the ego.
That's
And
that's really it. It's a binary choice
right.
at moment to moment, isn't
And
it?
of course, our function is, when the Course uses that term, it's always our function is forgiveness. Our function as an ego is projection,
Hmm.
is to try to root myself more deeply in this dream of separation and make the error of that real, and prove that I really do exist at God's expense, but it's not my fault. But our function, our right-minded function is to learn forgiveness, to learn that we have another choice, to practice that other choice, which means questioning when I find myself in this kind of turmoil, at least reminding myself that I must be choosing the ego right now because I'm not happy. And there is another choice. Maybe I'm too afraid to really, I know I get stuck because I feel like I want to choose the ego, and I'm saying I want to. Oh, there you go.
I
But
think our Freudian slips
yeah,
are showing
yeah.
today.
So, but I'm saying that I want to choose Jesus, but I'm experiencing the ego, and I
Yeah.
can't sense. And it's like, am I missing something here, Jesus? I've been practicing this a long time. Why am I not feeling better? And again, it's that, that's a judgment, and so we know we're really stuck in the ego thought system then, because I'm saying, oh, what I'm really saying is I'm a bad course student,
Hmm.
or you're not helping me, which both are judgments.
Hmm.
So and so we really, it does require that patience sometimes, and just acceptance, as he's saying earlier, to just accept that there's a part of me that's really afraid of this. It's really afraid of giving up personal self, and that doesn't make me sinful or a bad student. It just makes me scared, and sometimes you just have to wait that out. You know.
Yep, I think what you just shared reminded me of that. Another favorite quote is only infinite patience brings immediate results, or something
Mm,
like that.
right.
And I want it now. I want that infinite patience now, right? Another bumper
Yeah,
sticker,
I
yeah.
want to feel better, but we must, but then yet we're still clinging to, I want it on my terms, and we may not be aware of that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we're giving some kind of criteria of what better will look like.
Mhm.
And so, as long as those problems are still at the forefront of our mind, then we really aren't open to better.
That's true. It's true. Yeah, if we're defining what that piece needs to look like, or the form that it needs to take, then we're ironically denying ourselves the awareness that the piece that we want really is always available now.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Paragraph 5, yet mind apart from spirit cannot think. It has denied its source of strength, capital S source, and sees itself as helpless, limited, and weak. Dissociated from its function, which, as you point out rightfully, is forgiveness. Now, it thinks it is alone and separate, attacked by armies massed against itself. Might be virus
our
armies, right?
germs, yeah.
And hiding in the body's frail support. Now must it reconcile unlike with like, for this is what it thinks it is for. Yeah, we think that our life is here to fight the battle, and yet what what has ever been resolved through war, whether it's an internal war or an external war? We,
Yeah, there's always another war that follows.
mm-hmm.
So, waste no more time on this. Who can resolve the senseless conflicts which a dream presents? Certainly not me. I haven't had any success. How's that working out for you, right?
Yeah, really.
What what could the resolution mean in truth? What purpose could it serve? And that's what we're always being asked in the course too. What is my purpose here? To root myself more deeply in the dream, or to find the better way, to take another step toward awakening? So what purpose could it serve? What is it for? Salvation cannot make illusions real, nor solve a problem that does not exist. Perhaps you hope it can. And I would say perhaps you still hope it can, because we do keep trying, right?
Mhm.
Yet would you have God's plan for the release of his dear son bring pain to him and fail to set him free? Yeah. we really are pushing away, though, something that would bring us so much enormous happiness that we can't even, that we've only had the tiniest glimpse of. So beyond anything that we know as pleasure in the world, and yet, we're defending against it as if it's, hell, right?
And like I say, we're basically clueless as to what that is,
Hmm.
aside from an occasional little glimpse of respite from the battle cry that we, you know, the ego's mantra that we keep reciting and almost endlessly in response to its propaganda. And then, but the moment that we just give ourselves a little break from that, it's like, oh, wow,
Yeah.
I'm at peace. I think a metaphor actually that's one of the silver linings of the current situation is, and I experienced this well, less than a week ago, driving down from Oregon to California to be with my mother here. Um, the hardly any cars on the road, and the spring foliage was more seemingly brighter than ever, and the wildlife was out, and
Mhm.
the air was clear and fresh, and but it's kind of when we the busyness and the warfare, if you will, of our ego world. That's just not really a terribly perfect metaphor at all, but when we have a lull in the battle, things clear up a little bit, and we do see a little more clearly. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, there's the quality of our experience when we've chosen our right mind versus, you know, our wrong mind is so much different. And
Yeah.
the same set of problems can still be there, and yet I mean, I was thinking this morning about, because just went through a few days of, really having a hard time, and then, made a shift, and even as I was trying to practice again, feel but having that resistance. And I was just, and I've sort of lost my train of thought here, but oh, I know, and it was just thinking that, the it's almost as if, as egos, for me anyway, it's as if I feel guilty about being happy at all when something like this is going on. Maybe that's the Catholic girl thing or something. But there's a part of me that's like, oh no, don't trust joy, don't trust happiness, don't you can't be lighthearted when there's something going on like this, and that's not kind, or something. And that's the ego's thinking, again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so strange when what we really need is lighter hearts. I mean, what we really need is to not take it as seriously. I mean, certainly we do the protective thing, and I'm not trying to diminish the
Exactly.
threat of this or the suffering that people are going through, but it doesn't mean that we have to walk around all the time, with this kind of grim reaper sort of
Mm-hmm.
dance, and
Yeah.
so and so I think it's important to, to still recognize that in any moment you can be joyful. In any moment there, you can be kind. You can look at something, I mean, it's still a part of the world, but the beauty of nature that, maybe reflects that loveliness, in our mind, and gives us that expansiveness that, that really, in which we can not feel guilty for, we can feel the joined purpose that we really have, and how lovely, the self within us collectively that is not part of this dream really is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a good point.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
if you think logically about what would you rather have someone give you, a gory, morbid, depressing, uh, message, or something that's uplifting, and it's like, well, then why not, you know, send essentially a virtual hug by way of a little levity, or
Right, or
a
some
little not taking
humor,
it so
puppy
seriously,
humor, and yeah, I mean, there's still puppies and kids and people running around. I mean, I'm not saying that they're innocent, because there's no hierarchy of that, but they're beings just like we are, and they have their own paths. But there's still lots of lighthearted, funny things going
oh
on, and
yeah, yeah.
And so,
About once a week, I get on the pun appreciated Facebook page and just crack myself up for a better part of an hour,
yeah,
looking at people's creativity for
right,
really good puns, which I happen to like. It's like,
right.
but everybody has something that
That
they
amuses them, and it's good for you to do that. It's good, it's
yeah. I mean, why
helpful.
not
Yeah,
make things a little less gruesome. I mean, it's nothing in the world is going to make us happy, but we can put our attention on the things that we think might be helpful, and do that without denying what seems to be going on in a way that you know makes it just a little bit brighter, a little bit more easy for everyone.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
And God's will for us is happiness. I mean,
Exactly,
is
exactly.
we're not. He doesn't endorse suffering. Jesus
No, no.
doesn't endorse suffering or
Yeah,
sacrifice or
yeah.
any of that. That's just nonsense. So
I would think that even the most staunch conservative you know Christian Bible bashers would probably have to admit somewhere that couldn't be a logical um, the whole suffering and damnation thing. There's got to be a flaw in that somewhere there. At least there's probably some. I would think there'd be some doubt in that theology that well, maybe the schizophrenic God, why. And I think that was one of my earliest thoughts before I really dove into metaphysics in adolescence. It's like, because my folks took us to a bunch of different churches trying to figure, my mom in particular, trying to
mhm.
trying to figure out something that made sense. And I remember going to one church, and after about half an hour listening to the sermon, I just went out and let myself back into the car. I was like, this does not
Yeah,
make sense. This
yeah,
this idea of this God that's blows hot and cold, and one day is kind and loving, the other next day is this fire and brimstone spewing.
right.
It's like, how could that be consistent? And it just didn't click for me. So when the course came along, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah,
I mean, I think it probably at some point in people's development doesn't click, but
yeah, yeah.
it's just a matter of how much it doesn't click, or
Right, right.
I mean, but it is the world. It probably for everybody shares that underlying
I
doubt.
think that's what I'm saying. Yeah, on some level we must all be wondering, how could this possibly be a world
Right,
with no true peaceful exit strategy? If
right.
yeah,
But we're very good at denying, and whether you're religious or not, you come here for the
right.
same reason.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
it's
Yes.
it's
And
all
I,
out
and that
line.
last comment
Yeah,
wasn't in any sense meant to
right.
be condemning of any
No, I know it wasn't.
particular religion or faith or
No,
whatever. Yeah. So yeah,
no,
whatsoever.
we're all doing the same thing. It just
Exactly,
we
exactly.
just have different stories that we deny it with. So
Yep, yep, yep.
Um, so are we on paragraph 7?
I think so.
Okay, your self retains its thoughts, its capital T thoughts, and they remain within your mind and in the mind of God. The Holy Spirit holds salvation in your mind and offers it the way to peace. Salvation is a thought you share with God because his voice accepted it for you and awakened in your name that it was done. Thus is salvation kept among the thoughts your self holds dear and cherishes for you. And that's, I mean, that's certainly not literal, but it's just that idea that we remain in God, just dreaming of exile, right? All of we're still uninterrupted, having a life with God, and none of this, I mean, he's telling us as if we really had separated, that God is holding these thoughts for us, or but in truth, we didn't separate, and we're just really still a thought in the mind of God. you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
so.
Which is kind of hard. It's kind of boggling when we really contemplate it, and yet something like that is really, I think, a primary motivation for continuing on and recognizing that, there really is something that is, and I think you were alluding to it earlier in this conversation, that's something far more glorious than we can possibly imagine,
Right,
that really we've just pushed out of our mind for for no good reason. Really,
exactly.
it's just silly. It's just silly. And
It's
I keep
just
coming
silly.
back to that one thing that Ken Wapnick said, a handful of times at least, that the ego is not evil, sinful, or wicked. It's just silly. And ultimately,
Exactly.
it's like, why would we want to be a masochist when
Well, that's that
no choice.
lightheartedness again,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
the being willing to smile gently at it,
yeah.
and not to, you know, not to again to depreciate the, you know, that people are suffering in any way,
Of course not.
but to really, you know, we don't have to be taking this so seriously, and you know, we can at least be questioning the validity of what's happening.
Hmm.
And honestly, when we do that, then we're much more apt to be, we will be kind, because we you know, we really, we can feel the pain of it, and yet we you know, are aligned with the part of us that knows that we're really safe, and so
Yeah.
we can then offer that, and not in words necessarily at all or anything like that, but you know, accepting that truth for ourselves has a comforting effect around us on all minds, because it's
Hmm.
the only thing that really can comfort. So
Yes.
it gives the opportunity for all minds to make that same choice, you know, so that we're not just bodies, that this is not all we are, and so therefore, you know, we can't, we're not, we're not vulnerable in the way that we think we are.
Hmm. Yeah.
But
On some level, I think we all know on some level, however buried deeply, that we're all spirit, capital S spirit, and yet the
it's
dream
hard.
here
It's hard.
seems to be pretty. The propaganda is pretty thick, and
Oh my gosh.
boy,
Yeah.
we bought into it. But this is such a great opportunity if we really want to turn it around. What a golden opportunity to really look mindfully at all the upset and see how it's a setup. I've got
Mhm.
this little diagram. I'm gonna. Oh, you can't really see it with
Can't
that
see it.
that
Yeah.
virtual background. But anyway, yeah, I'll put that little diagram on the
Yeah, that'd
website,
be great. Yeah.
because I think it's just an amazing setup that the ego does with its projection 24/7, unless we interrupt it with a little bit of sanity, that creates the drama of course that's in the interpretation of the ego that says, oh, see, that which I feared has come upon me, and so we just keep this endless feedback loop going, forgetting that the cause is in my mind, and it's not about anything external that's doing anything to me. I
Exactly.
did it to myself, but
Yeah.
only in a
You
dream,
did it
and
to
that's
yourself. Yep.
the
Yep.
dream makes it unfounded. Yeah.
So true.
Yep.
Well, we've gone a pretty long time. Should we just read through the rest of it so we can finish?
Sure, sure,
Yep.
sure. Okay.
Um,
Why don't I read a couple of paragraphs and
okay.
you can finish the rest? How's that sound?
Perfect.
Okay. We will attempt today to find this thought whose presence in your mind is guaranteed by him who speaks to you from your one self. Our hourly 5-minute practicing will be a search for him within your mind. Salvation comes from this one self through him who is the bridge between your mind and it. Wait patiently. Let him speak to you about yourself and what your mind can do, restored to it and free to serve its will. Begin with saying this: Salvation comes from my one self. Its thoughts are mine to use. Then seek its thoughts and claim them as your own. These are your own real thoughts you have denied, and let your mind go wandering through in a world of dreams to find illusions in their place. Here are your thoughts, the only ones you have. Salvation is among them. Find it there. Sounds very Zen, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Well, and again, you know, it's just really the well, he'll tell us in this, but
Hmm.
you know, it's really just trying to train us to get to learn and accept that we have another part of our mind, and the other part of our mind doesn't agree with us about what the problem is, and you know, has no, nothing outside our mind can take our peace away, and this other part of our mind can return it to us if we're willing to open to it, you
Hmm.
know. So then, so are we on 10 or?
10? Yeah.
If you succeed, the thoughts that come to you will tell you you are saved and that your mind has found the function that it sought to lose. Yourself will welcome it and give it peace. Restored in strength, it will again flow out from spirit to the spirit in all things created by the spirit as itself. Your mind will bless all things. Confusion done, you are restored, for you have found yourself. yourself knows that you cannot fail today. Excuse me. Perhaps your mind remains uncertain yet a little while. Be not dismayed by this. The joy yourself experiences, it will save for you, and it will yet be yours in full awareness. Every time you spend 5 minutes of the hour seeking him who joins your mind and self, you offer him another treasure to be kept for you. Each time today you tell your frantic mind salvation comes from your one self, you lay another treasure in your growing store, and all of it is given everyone who asks for it and will accept the gift. Think then how much is given unto you to give this day that it be given you. So, when we're in that frantic state, we have that choice,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And
And that last sentence or two, it really reminds us that every time we give ourselves a moment of peace, which is a joyous experience, we're giving that to the entire sonship, as the Course would say. We're giving it to
yeah,
every mind everywhere, because minds are joined, and it doesn't really matter whether we seem to be, holed up in our homes, or self-quarantining in whatever situation we find ourselves in. um, Minds are joined regardless of the seeming proximity or lack thereof, on the level of form.
right,
And everyone we do come in contact with in a way that would be more obvious, as you were pointing out, that'll be evident too. And we know, if we're sharing a downer experience, we kind of know that when we're doing it, and if we're with someone in a compassionate way that acknowledges, the pain and the situation without reinforcing it. I think that comes across too, when we're
right. And I
truly
mean, it
compassionate.
really,
Yeah.
if we've made that choice, if we've made the choice, and we are experiencing ourselves from the right mind, in the right mind, then whatever would be helpful would flow from it if
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
was necessary. But really, what it's demonstrating to people is much deeper, and is really just that they too, are part of the decision making mind. They have that choice too. That's really the great hope of A Course in Miracles, is that we're not bodies, we're a decision making mind, and we're not caught in this trap of the ego thought system. We have another part of us, and the other part of us is real. This one isn't.
Yeah.
So,
And that capital S self that we're sharing is eternally innocent,
right.
and we're conveying that by our willingness to suspend the grievances and the condemnation and the
Right, to let
judgment.
it go
Yeah.
ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's done for us. I mean, we just have to, again, our part is so small, you know, is to just say, I'm wrong. I want to, I could see peace. I want to see peace instead of this.
Yeah.
And then wait.
Exactly.
So I think
Very
that's,
helpful. Thank you,
yeah,
Susan.
thank you.
I always enjoy the conversations and the reminders that come from them.
You too. Yeah.
Yeah.
For both of us, right? Yeah, all of us. So thanks a lot, Bruce.
Thanks. I'll be posting this on acimblog.com, and also on your wonderful blog, forasandforgiveness.com. So
Yeah.
until next time, thanks again.
Stay well.